The first time he noticed her, it wasn't because she demanded attention. It was because she didn't. The range was alive with noise, rifles cracking like thunder, instructors shouting corrections, dust drifting in lazy clouds under the harsh sun. Operators moved with practiced confidence, laughing between strings of fire, some showing off for the younger recruits. At the far end of the firing line rested the Barrett .50, massive and intimidating, its long barrel catching the light like a warning. Even experienced snipers treated it carefully, adjusting their posture twice, bracing for the punishment it could deliver. Then she walked up to it. She was quiet, almost blending into the background, her movements economical and deliberate. No wasted gestures, no nervous energy. He watched from behind the safety line, half expecting the usual signs: tight shoulders, clenched jaw, the subtle flinch before recoil. Instead, she knelt, adjusted the bipod legs by a few millimeters, and pressed the rear bag into the dirt with calm precision. Her cheek weld was perfect on the first try. That alone made him narrow his eyes. People didn't just get a rifle like that on instinct. It took years. She cycled the bolt, the metallic click sharp and clean, and paused. Not frozen, listening. Her eyes moved from the distant target to the wind flags, then to the mirage dancing above the ground. Heat shimmer bent the air into illusions, and the valley funneled wind in unpredictable waves. He knew this range well. Shots here punished arrogance. She reached up and dialed her scope, a tiny adjustment most people would consider meaningless. He felt a strange tension settle in his chest, the kind that came before witnessing something rare. When she fired, the sound was violent, the Barrett's report slamming into the range and echoing back from the hills. Dust burst beneath the muzzle brake. For a fraction of a second, there was nothing. Then, far downrange, steel rang out, clear, solid, unmistakable. A center hit. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A few heads turned. She didn't react. She logged the shot in her data book, adjusted again, and fired a second round with the same controlled rhythm. Another hit. Same place. He straightened unconsciously, no longer leaning casually against the rail. His eyes stayed locked on her. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a lucky string. It was discipline layered on top of deep understanding. Around him, murmurs began to spread, quiet at first, then sharper. Who is she? Is that her rifle? Did you see that grouping? She finally lifted her head, scanning the range with a detached calm, as if checking a list rather than soaking in attention. The instructor called a short break, but no one moved right away. People wanted to see what she'd do next. She stood, stretching slightly, and he noticed something else then: her breathing. Slow, controlled, the same before standing as before firing. That steadiness unsettled him more than the hits themselves. Later, as the sun climbed higher and the heat grew oppressive, talk turned to extremes. Someone joked about record shots, about distances no one seriously attempted outside of controlled demonstrations. Ballistic limits, theoretical ceilings. Someone pulled out a phone, scrolling through charts and numbers. She listened from a few steps away, cleaning the Barrett with methodical care, her expression neutral. When the instructor mentioned a long-range challenge, something beyond routine training, something meant more as discussion than action, most laughed it off. She didn't laugh. "I can attempt it," she said calmly. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. Heads turned fully now. He felt his pulse quicken. Attempt what she was implying meant stepping beyond comfort, beyond doctrine. It meant trusting math, instinct, and patience at a level few ever reached. The instructor studied her for a long moment, weighing risk against curiosity. Finally, he nodded slowly. As the team began preparing equipment and relocating to the extended firing position, he found himself watching her with a different lens. Not as an anomaly, not as a surprise, but as someone operating on a plane most never touched. She moved with the same quiet efficiency, adjusting gear, checking data, never rushing. Standing there, feeling the heat, the wind, the anticipation building in the air, he realized something unsettling and exhilarating at once. They weren't about to witness a stunt. They were about to witness history begin. The valley opened up in front of them like a living map, wide and unforgiving, carved by wind and time into shallow ridges and deceptive channels. From this distance, the target was nothing more than a pale speck against rock and scrub, barely distinguishable even through high-powered optics. The air shimmered constantly, heat waves bending reality, making the ground appear to breathe. This was the kind of place where confidence went to die. He had seen seasoned snipers miss badly here, humbled by invisible currents and micro shifts that turned perfect calculations into educated guesses. As the team settled in, radios crackled softly, and range officers confirmed positions with clipped, professional tones. She lay prone behind the Barrett, her body aligned as if drawn by a ruler. The rifle looked enormous against her frame, yet there was no strain in how she handled it. Spotters set up on either side, scopes angled slightly differently to catch wind variations across distance. Someone read out environmental data: temperature, barometric pressure, altitude density, numbers stacking on numbers until it felt abstract. She wrote them down without comment, her pencil moving smoothly across the page. He watched her face, expecting at least a flicker of tension. There was none, only focus. She peered through the scope, then away from it, then back again. Her eyes traced the terrain between muzzle and target, not as a straight line but as a layered story, where wind sped up, where it died, where it twisted unpredictably. She dialed elevation far past what most people would ever dare, the turret clicking steadily. A few observers exchanged uneasy looks. This was no longer theory. This was commitment. "I'm sending a sighter," she said into the radio, voice calm, almost conversational. The first round thundered out, recoil absorbed cleanly by her body. Dust erupted at the muzzle, and the long wait began. Seconds stretched. Spotters tracked the vapor trail as it arced impossibly high, then vanished. A call came in, distant and tense, impact low and right. Not a miss in the traditional sense, but a data point. She nodded once, already adjusting. Wind had shifted mid-flight. She had expected that. Minutes passed between shots. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like hesitation. He knew better. She was listening to the range, watching flags flicker, reading mirage that changed direction like a living thing. When the wind picked up suddenly, she didn't rush to beat it. She waited it out. When it calmed, she waited longer still, letting conditions settle into something repeatable. "Second round," she said. Again, the Barrett roared. Again, the long silence. The spotter's voice came back tighter this time, unpacked closer. Very close. A ripple of excitement moved through the observers, quickly smothered by discipline. No one spoke loudly. No one wanted to break the fragile rhythm she had built. She adjusted by fractions now, numbers so small they seemed meaningless against kilometers of open land. He felt sweat trickle down his spine, not from heat but from anticipation. He had never been this invested in a shot he wasn't taking. Around him, even the skeptics had gone quiet. She breathed in slowly, then out, letting the rifle settle. For a long moment, she didn't move at all. The valley felt suspended, as if the wind itself was waiting. When she fired the third time, it felt different. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the stillness before the shot, or the certainty in her posture. The round vanished into the distance, and everyone leaned forward instinctively, eyes locked on optics, hands tightening on radios. The wait felt endless. Then the call came through, sharp and almost disbelieving: impact. A solid strike, not a grazing hit, not a lucky touch, a confirmed, clean impact at a distance most only spoke about in classrooms. For a second, no one reacted. The silence was total, broken only by the faint echo rolling back from the hills. She exhaled and rested her forehead briefly against the stock, not in relief, but in acknowledgement. She logged the shot calmly, as if recording something expected. He felt a strange pressure behind his eyes. This wasn't just skill, it was patience weaponized, discipline pushed to its absolute edge. As confirmations began rolling in and numbers were rechecked, he realized they were no longer watching an attempt. They were watching the impossible become undeniable. The verification took longer than the shot itself. That was the irony of it. While the echo of the Barrett's thunder still seemed to hang in the valley, officers were already double-checking coordinates, cross-referencing GPS data, recalculating distance with laser rangefinders and mapping software. Radios buzzed with clipped confirmations, each one tightening the knot in the air. She remained prone for a moment longer, letting the rifle cool beneath her hands, then slowly sat up. There was no celebration in her movements, no victorious grin. Just a quiet stillness, as if she were listening to something only she could hear. He watched her from a few steps away, trying to reconcile what he had just witnessed with everything he thought he knew about limits. Around them, The range felt different now. People spoke in low voices, some shaking their heads, others staring out at the distant target as if it might vanish if they looked away too long. One of the spotters laughed softly, the sound edged with disbelief. Another wiped sweat from his brow and said nothing at all. When the final numbers came in, the range officer read them twice before speaking louder, his voice carrying across the firing line. 3,347 meters. Confirmed. The words landed like a physical force. Someone let out a sharp breath. Someone else swore under their breath. A few just stood frozen, hands on hips, eyes wide. She stood then, slinging the rifle with practiced ease. Only now did she allow herself a small smile. Not pride, not arrogance, but something closer to satisfaction. A job done the way it should be done. The instructor approached her, extending a hand, his expression caught somewhere between professional composure and open awe. "That changes things," he said quietly. She shook his hand once. "It just proves what patience can do," she replied. He found himself walking toward her before he consciously decided to. When she looked at him, her gaze was steady, curious but unguarded. "I've seen a lot of good shooters," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I've never seen someone wait like that." She shrugged slightly. "Most people rush because they're afraid the moment will pass," she said. "The moment always comes back. You just have to be ready when it does." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the valley, the range slowly returned to motion. Gear was packed, rifles cleared, data books closed. But something had shifted. He could feel it in the way people spoke to her now, not louder, not softer, just different. With respect stripped of surprise. With understanding earned the hard way. She walked toward the transport vehicles, dust crunching under her boots, the Barrett secured at her side. He watched her go, knowing that this story would travel far beyond this valley. It would be told and retold, distances rounded up or down, details exaggerated, names whispered with disbelief. But the core of it, the discipline, the silence, the waiting, would be hard to capture. As engines started and the range finally emptied, he realized he had been holding on to the moment, afraid to let it settle into memory. Some days were just training days. Others redrew the map of what was possible. Today had been the latter. And for everyone who wasn't there, who would only hear fragments and rumors of the shot that rewrote expectations, this story would matter. Stories like this remind us why mastery isn't loud, why true skill doesn't need permission, and why limits exist mostly in the mind. If you want more powerful mission stories like this, stories of calm under pressure, hidden mastery, and moments that change everything, don't forget to subscribe to the channel Her Stories Words. More unforgettable stories are waiting for you.